Good evening. You're watching the main news on HKIBC. I'm Maisy Mok. Here's a look at tonight's top stories. A strong earthquake jolts Morocco, killing over 800 people and injuring hundreds more. Locally, Wong Tai Sin Station closes for 4 hours today, just one day after it reopened. And about 200 residents of Shek O have been evacuated after their village was cut off by landslides. At least 820 people have been killed and a similar number injured in a strong earthquake that shook Morocco. Several countries expressed sympathy and are rushing emergency aid to Arab state following the magnitude 7.2 tremor. Sachin Katvi reports.
People in central Morocco ran out into the streets in panic after a powerful earthquake rocked the North African country as they were about to go to sleep last night. The epicenter of the quake was in the Atlas Mountains, 70 kilometers southwest of the city of Marrakesh, a popular tourist destination. Nearly half of the deaths occurred in the neighboring province of Al-Haus. Tremors were felt in the capital Rabat, 350 kilometers away. This Marrakesh resident who was visiting neighbors in his building said items which were fixed on the walls started falling down. This woman said the vibration was very intense, prompting her to flee with her mother to safety. Survivors sought temporary refuge on the streets as many structures collapsed. There was also fear of aftershocks. Buildings were reduced to rubble and rescue workers had a tough time navigating through narrow streets to look for survivors and the injured. The authorities have called for blood donations amid fears that the casualty toll will rise as rescuers step up their search. A number of historic buildings and structures have been damaged. These include the red walls that surround Marrakesh's old city. Many countries are rushing aid to Morocco to help the country cope with its worst earthquake in 2 decades. Sachin Katvi, HKIBC.
Locally, Wong Tai Sin Station reopened this morning, a day after it was heavily flooded by the unprecedented rainstorm that struck the city late on Thursday and continued until yesterday. But the station had to be closed again today, this time for a few hours, after a power supply disruption affected the Kwun Tong line. MTR staff worked overnight to drain water from the tunnels of Wong Tai Sin Station. The station reopened this morning, but it looked battered. Escalators at the exit did not work. Platform screen doors were unable to close when train left the station. MTR staff had to place buckets on the platform to collect water dripping from the ceiling. After around 3 hours of operation, the MTR Corporation suspended services between Shek O and Choi Hong stations on the Kwun Tong line. This came after water was found dripping from the ceiling of a tunnel. The water fell onto the insulator of the overhead cable, affecting the power supply. Over 100 people left the station, which was then closed. People outside Wong Tai Sin Station were confused when staff closed the gates at around 10 a.m. This man complained that the arrangements were troublesome and the station should have stayed shut until everything was in order. Wong Tai Sin Station reopened after staff replaced 3 insulators and diverted the water dripping from the ceiling. Kwun Tong line services returned to normal just before 2 p.m. Over 200 residents of Shek O have been evacuated after the only road leading to their villages was cut off by 2 landslides. The evacuees cheered when they arrived at North Point at about 5:30 p.m. Earlier, firefighters set up a makeshift pier on the beach to help the residents board rescue boats. Some of them were taken to the Morton Terrace Activity Center. The government flying service was on standby to help supply essentials to those who chose to stay back. There had been reports that 1,000 people in 2 villages faced a food shortage after the road was blocked. The evacuation and road clearance work will continue tonight. The government is to speed up the processing of applications for emergency funds following the heavy flooding. The administration also pledged to keep shelters open as long as people need to use them. Chloe Fong reports.
Chief Executive Zhang Li and Home Affairs Minister Maisy Mok visited Maui Hachun in Fanling this morning to inspect clearance work and operations at a shelter, which took in over 200 people evacuated at the height of the rainstorm. Li comforted the evacuees and asked elderly residents about their needs. Some said they had a power cut in the village, but supplies were restored after repairs. The heavy rainfall caused floods in several districts. Mok said about 250 civil servants from 7 departments were helping with relocation and recovery work at 4 temporary shelters in the North District. The shelters will stay open as long as they're needed. Mok said some residents suffered financial losses from the floods. More manpower will be deployed to help them apply to the Emergency Assistance Fund. She said the approval process will be flexible to help victims rebuild their homes. Separately, Secretary for the Civil Service, Ingrid Yuan, said more government staff will help with the cleanup.
The final number can only be decided as the day goes on when they have an estimate of how much work needs to be done.
Some government engineers used drones to check the landslide in Chako Lane. The area was reopened at noon after being cordoned off yesterday. Chloe Feng, HKIBC.
A firm which operates shopping malls and car parks says it will take days for operations to resume following yesterday's downpours. The lower ground floor of Temple Mall North, which the Link REIT runs in Wong Tai Sin, remained flooded this morning, but the water level receded, revealing the damage with debris and chairs littering the area. 10 restaurants and shops had to be closed. The company expects to take 2 or 3 days to clean up the car park at Wan Choi Shopping Center in Chai Wan. The water has drained off, but the area is clogged with mud. The government has rejected calls for workers to stay home when the city is hit by extreme weather. Schools, meanwhile, are expected to reopen on Monday, unless repair and cleanup work has not finished. 6 hours after the start of the ferocious rainstorm late on Thursday night, the government issued its first extreme conditions warning, lasted for 18 hours before ending at midnight last night. While the alert was in effect, bosses and employees were advised by the government via Facebook to follow the working procedure used when the number 8 typhoon signal is issued. But many netizens were critical and said the authorities should have ordered a citywide work suspension. Speaking on iCable News program Let's Talk, Labor Minister Chris Sun rejected the call, saying workers such as hospital and elderly care center staff are required to report for duty regardless of the weather. He was asked whether the government can compile a list of essential jobs. But Sun said there are too many sectors in the city, and each can make its own decision on essential workers according to its needs. Classes were cancelled yesterday because of the downpours, and most students will return to classes next week. But the Education Bureau says schools can decide to remain shut on Monday if they are still carrying out cleaning or repair work. The Bureau received more than 20 reports of school facilities damaged by floods or leakage and power cuts. Insurance experts say successful claims for vehicle damage due to flooding depend on whether preventive measures were taken and the type of policy. Several hundred vehicles were damaged in the rainstorm. Roy Zheng, chairman of the Insurance Professionals Federation, says a key factor is whether the owner took all reasonable steps to protect the vehicle from poor weather, such as driving towards a safer area instead of high-risk places. Insurance companies could refuse claims if no precautions were taken. Third-party insurance does not cover floods, but a comprehensive policy will enable a person whose car is damaged in a flood to buy a new one. Overseas, India says a consensus has been reached among a group of 20 members despite their differences over the conflict in Ukraine. The G20 also granted the African Union permanent member status, Chloe Fong reports.
It was the milestone moment Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi had been waiting for, as movers and shakers from the world's top economies gathered in New Delhi for the G20 summit. In his opening remarks, Modi started by offering support to Morocco following a deadly earthquake. He then announced that the G20 nations agreed to grant the African Union permanent membership status. The move will give the 55-member African bloc the same status as the European Union at the Group of 20, which Modi said will strengthen the voice of the Global South. He also called on world leaders to convert the global trust deficit to one trust and one confidence, moving together to tackle challenges in the global economy. The name card before Modi was Bharat, the Hindi and Sanskrit title for India. Premier Li Qiang, representing China, said President Xi Jinping pointed that no one can stay on their own in the face of a major crisis. In a surprising move, Modi also announced that a consensus was approved by the group's members, following a breakthrough on how to describe Russia's war on Ukraine. The announcement came amid speculation that the G20 may not release a joint communiqué because the members are divided on the issue of Ukraine. U.S. President Joe Biden earlier met the leaders of BRICS members, Brazil, India, South Africa, seizing on the absence of Xi and Russian President Vladimir Putin. Chloe Fong, HKIBC.
North Korea has put on a lavish performance to mark the 75th anniversary of its founding.
우리 국가, 우리 인민을 언제나 승리와 영광의 한 길로 이끌어 주시는 위대한 어머니당 조선노동당의
The country's leader Kim Jong-un was accompanied by his daughter as he watched a grand parade in Pyongyang last night. Pictures provided by North Korean state TV showed soldiers marching in precision, but no heavy weapons, such as missiles, were seen. The highlights of the gala included fireworks over the skies of the North Korean capital. Earlier in the day, Kim met Vice Premier Liu Guozhong to discuss stronger cooperation with China. On to the weather now. Tomorrow will be cloudy with showers and thunderstorms. Temperatures will range between 26 and 28 degrees, staying wet in the following days. That's our main news for Saturday night. Join us for more news at 11. I'm Maisy Mok. Thanks for watching. Good night.